We did it. I am now the two-time USA Streetlifting pound for pound national champion, and we came through in the clutch as you saw in the previous video. And really what I want to do in this video is just kind of break down my performance, because even though everything seemed fairly smooth for the most part, in reality it was a pretty rough day. But first, let me show you something really quickly. Take a look at the shirt. How are we feeling about this here? Don't want to say too much, but I will have a announcement. I'll have a pretty big announcement hopefully within the next few videos, so you'll have to stay tuned for that. But let's get back to the conversation about nationals. Okay, cool. So I'm going to look through the footage as I'm talking with you about this whole thing. One thing that I will have to say is the success that I did have in this competition would not be possible if it were not for your support. I want to really thank every single person on here who has been watching these videos, supporting, dropping comments, dropping likes. All of the support that you have given so far has been appreciated, and it does not go unnoticed. That's one thing that I will say. We don't have a super large channel, but we are definitely growing steadily, and it is my aim, especially this year. Last year, I kind of fell off. After the competition, I stopped posting. I didn't really know what to post, but this year I am super inspired, and I believe that I have a ton of value that I'll be able to pass off to you all, and hopefully it will be of great benefit. So we're going to keep cranking the videos out, and I hope that you keep liking, subscribing the videos, dropping comments, and all of that. Drop anything in the comments that you want me to make a video about. I am more than happy to look into it and see what I can do. But for now, let's chat about this competition. So Nationals 2025, highly anticipated. This was supposed to be the greatest meet ever for me. I had definitely visualized this in my head over and over and over again as we led up to the competition, that this was going to be just a really good competition, that I was going to perform at just the top level that I possibly could. And at the end of the day, the reality is, especially when it comes to competition, things really don't always go the way that you think. There's the famous quote, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, and that is legitimately what happened to me. There was a comment on my previous YouTube video of the competition. Someone was mentioning just the way that I was going super hard in the peak week, in pretty much my last heavy week of training, and I did end up failing multiple sets and all of that, and that definitely does take a toll on you. And so then to reference that, essentially, the week before, in the video before, so 2 videos ago essentially, I showed you the 215 kg squat that I tried to get for a double, that I ended up failing the second rep. And that was not really due to a strength issue. That was a technical error that I made where my weight was shifting pretty poorly on the squat, and I had to compensate heavily on the first rep, and that essentially sapped out all of my energy. So failed that. That's not great for the mental. Hit a redemption set of 365 pounds for 8 reps, which was a new PR. Sleeveless. I was using a belt for that, so that's pretty cool. We moved some good volume, but at the end of the day, it does put a question mark in your head about how you'll perform on the actual competition day. And I had some similar issues with dips, where dips weren't moving as I expected them to. On the other hand, my chin-ups were on fire. Within peak week, I was able to hit a new PR of 172.5 pounds. So I was feeling really good about going into the competition, with my aim being 80 kg. And realistically, I was projecting myself to be somewhere around 450 kg to 460 for my total on the day. And, you know, it makes sense, because 9 weeks out from the competition, I hit a 428. And with all of my lifts really coming together, things were looking pretty good. But we definitely got hit with a curveball, and we had to just make the adjustments. So regardless, just looking at sort of what went down with the competition, one of the things that I have to toss in there was, originally in the beginning of the day, met up with Amanda, who was the photographer for USA Streetlifting on the day, and we did this mini little photo shoot in the morning where I dressed up. I really took that inspiration from just some of the big power lifters that I have seen and followed over time, Russ Swole being one of them. That's a huge inspiration, and he always puts on a fit for the actual competition. And so I wanted to dress up a little bit, you know, have some good vibes going in to the actual day, show a little bit of confidence. I was the returning champ, and I wanted to just, you know, show up like I was ready for business. And so after that, all we had to do was really go and weigh in. It was time to get things started. 7 days prior, I started water loading in order to execute a water cut for this competition. I was about 164 pounds at the beginning of that water cut, and the goal was essentially to just cut down to 160 or minus 160 essentially, so that I could fit into my weight class. So I was looking to also make sure that I was going to be able to secure pound for pound champion this year as well. So I was a little weary of weighing in too heavy. So I wanted to push that weight cut. And what ended up happening is that I actually ended up cutting, I think, roughly 8 pounds or so. I weighed in at about 157.5 the morning before actually driving about an hour and a half or so to the location for the competition. And when I got there, the scale is in kgs. I weighed in at 71.4 kg, I believe. Coincidentally, the weight that I weighed in last year for the competition, but the difference here was that last year I dieted all the way down to that 71.4 kg, and so as a result there was some muscle loss as well as fat loss. Of course, you know, if you lose muscle, then that strength that kind of goes with it as well, and so I think that did slightly affect some of my performance, but there was no water cut involved. And so this time we started at a much higher weight at 164, where I was feeling pretty comfortable moving a lot heavier weight this year, and then we made that water cut, and so everything was feeling good. We weighed in, and then I started to rehydrate. It was time to go in and to start warming up for muscle ups, which is the first lift of the day. So for anyone who's not familiar with street lifting, 4 main movements. The order is muscle up, pull up or chin up, dip, and then squat. And so as I went to warm up for my muscle ups, as you probably saw in the edit from last week, I immediately started cramping. So as I literally reached up to the bar, to the pull-up bar, to start warming up for muscle-ups, my hand seized and I could not open my hand. And from that point in time, we had to sort of switch up our plan on the day. And shout out to Tyrell, who was with me essentially as my handler for the day. He went to work immediately and started massaging my forearm. So we were working on the right side. We also had to put a little bit of work on the left side as well, just to make sure the cramping would stay away. And so essentially what we were doing was massaging in between every single warm-up set, and every time that we had a little bit of free time, we were just really working into the forearms to make sure that they wouldn't cramp up. And at that point in time, I realized I was not rehydrating at the rate that I needed to. So for the electrolytes that I was consuming, I probably should have been consuming them at twice the speed that I was in order to rehydrate in time for my body to not start cramping. So this was something that was entirely avoidable, but it was more so a lack of experience on my end, not realizing the intensity in which I needed to approach the recomp. And so anyways, we get warmed up for muscle ups and we get started. Start out 15 kg, we wanted a conservative opener. The goal was for it to be something that was easy, and 20 kg was always sort of that golden number as being our second attempt. If we could make 20, then essentially I was setting myself up to have a pretty good day, and for my projections, 20 was essentially all we needed. 25 definitely was the goal that I wanted, but as the day kind of just got really just ruffled up, after I hit 20 kg, the goal was to sort of now reassess and figure out if I really had that 25 in me. And after hitting the 20, it was a pretty close call. I wasn't very happy with how my transition was feeling on that 20 kg, so I made the call to go up only 2.5. We went for the 2.5, and the issue that I had, I probably could have gotten the 22.5 kg muscle up, but the box ended up being shifted forward a little bit, and I didn't realize that. And so once I actually got onto the box and was ready to line up to start the muscle up, then I didn't have enough room to actually get a decent swing for the rep to go down. So we ended up missing that 22.5 kg muscle up, but that was no big deal because we got the 20. The way that you should select your weights is such that if you miss your third attempt, your second attempt was high enough such that you would be happy with that on the day. And that was kind of the approach that we were taking there, because we really only needed that 20 kg to set us up nicely for a solid subtotal leading throughout the rest of the day. So moving on from there, we're continuing to massage the arms as much as we possibly can, and I am just hydrating at this point in time. I am downing full bottles of electrolytes, Gatorades. We were just going after it, Element, the whole 9 yards, doing as much as I possibly could. One thing I'll say is think about the fact that you are in the middle of a competition. You have to be drinking so much liquid. That was definitely something that was not necessarily a distraction, but it's difficult because you're definitely requiring a lot from the body, as well as the fact that I needed to be eating at the same time. So I'm eating granola bars, eating the rice cakes with honey, the bananas, and all of that stuff, and really just trying to feed my body with the energy that I needed to be able to perform on the day. So we move on to chin-ups, and this is essentially my bread and butter. So this is where I'm expecting to have a really strong performance. Warm-ups felt solid, but the problem that I was running into, I'm sure that anyone who has had cramps throughout a competition becomes very weary of the thought of cramping up during one of your lifts that you're attempting. And so then that was sort of always in the back of my head, and it made me a little bit hesitant with my attempts. And so went for 65 kg as my first attempt. That moved just fine. Another thing that caused a little bit of trepidation was the fact that there is a stretch reflex rule that has been instated within Final Rep as well as USA Streetlifting, where once you're on the bar, when the start command is given, you can't then go into a scapular depression and pull, because there's a stretch reflex that they say is going to assist you in having some extra momentum for the movement. And so then I was trying to be very weary of that because I didn't want to get any bad calls. And so then if you don't properly depress before the call is given, what happens now is that you're starting in a slightly lat contracted position, and then with that your pull is just not as strong. So 65 kg, it was a quick rep. Goal was to minimize the amount of time that I was on the bar, because the goal was to save our energy for that final attempt of 80 kg. So that was fine. From there we bump up to 76.25, and I was pretty confident of this because I've hit this weight before. This actually was my second attempt last year in the competition as well, so I knew I was going to get it, but the question was how fast would I be able to get the rep. So I go in, and I wasn't very happy with my setup. I think I wasn't as depressed as I would have wanted to be when the start call was given. So I initiate the pull, and it was just a little bit slower than I wanted. And so then as a result, I stayed a bit longer on that bar than I wanted to. And even you'll probably see in the actual clip that the pull was pretty fast, but at the end of the day, the amount of pressure that I exerted, I was starting to realize, okay, this is not great for being able to conserve the energy that I needed for that 80 kg. And so after 76, I wasn't very much confident that I was going to get that 80 kg. But again, what we did was we selected that 76.25 kg such that if for some reason I failed the 80, I would still be good to go. We ended up scrapping attempt 3, and then that was just a method of us being able to save a bit more energy, especially with everything going on. My arms still being massaged, I'm still hydrating, a whole lot is going on at this time. And so dips have been tricky for me. And I think the complication is that my chest takes some time to recover from dips. So it's possible that in the future, I may actually not want to do dips more than maybe once a week. And so from there, we are definitely using the data that we got from this competition to be able to determine how we're going to move forward with training. And one thing that I haven't mentioned too is that I've only been working with my current coach for 6 months now. And so this is our first competition together. So at the end of the day, we are in the process of collecting data, and not every single call that we make is going to be super accurate. But I definitely had confidence in the depth of experience that he had, and being able to combine that with the experience that I have, that we would be able to sort of get through this and figure things out. We tried to be pretty intuitive with what we wanted, and so we chose 100 kg for our first attempt, and that is a weight that just, I think last week, so during peak week, 100 kg, I went up and hit that very easy, no problem. So the expectation was that I was going to be able to move 100 kg easily and not waste time on the bar as well as energy. One thing I didn't account for was the fact that like we had been just really working and cranking down on my arms for the entire day, trying to keep the cramps away, and that just saps the energy out of you. So I go to the bar, line up for 80 kg. The setup on the box as well as the bar was just a little bit awkward. I wasn't super comfortable with it. And so we go for the 80 kg and we get the attempt. It was a relatively fast rep, but I spent too much time on the bar. It ended up being harder than I thought. And so then as a result now, we knew that we wanted about 112 to 115 for our second attempt. I thought that 112 was probably there, and I had a feeling that it was going to be a heavy grind, but I said to myself, okay, we'll just put it all out and get that 112 and call it a day. And it just so happened that 112 was just barely beyond my reach. I hit a sticking point that was so close to me being able to just get through it and lock out that I was not expecting. And the issue, what happens is that if you fail a rep, you can't actually decrease the weight that you attempt for your next attempt. So I had to go for 112 again. We failed it twice, and so that was unfortunate. That was probably the one thing within this competition that we did not anticipate, was that dips were going to massively underperform, and then we were going to be at a deficit when it came to the subtotal that we had put together before squats. And so ideally I would have gotten that 112. We would have been sitting in a very nice position. My goal for this entire competition was that I was going to secure first place with my second squat attempt and then go for a super heavy third squat attempt to be able to get that pound for pound. And that 100 kg dip kind of messed some things up. So anyways, moving on to what happened with squats. So by the time it was time to warm up for squats, things had actually turned around, I guess for the better really. Things had really turned around for the better at that point in time. So then now the cramps were finally gone. At that point in time, I think I had estimated that I had consumed about 2.4 liters in total of electrolytes. And that is a lot of liquid to consume throughout the day. So as you can imagine, I was literally going to the bathroom between every single attempt that I made. So then just the energy wasted and all of that, just the stress on the body, the shock of having to, consume so much water, having not consumed any liquids the day before. That was just definitely a lot to work with. And I definitely have learned my lesson, and I know that I'm going to approach my next water cut in a more educated manner, and definitely a more aggressive manner to avoid some of these issues. But moving on to squats. I was saying chin-ups are my bread and butter, but squats are definitely my bread and butter because that is the big advantage that I have over the rest of my weight class. And so we wanted to make sure that, again, the way we were setting up our attempts is essentially first attempt, just needed to be a joke, essentially a warm-up into the second attempt, and second attempt was conserving energy for the final attempt. So the goal was we wanted to go for 190 kg, which is about 419 pounds, and that was supposed to be a joke. So I go in, we go for that squat, and as expected, it was a joke. So finally, one of my lifts today is moving exactly the way that we are expecting it to. So we knocked that out. And one of the things too, last year, one issue that I had is that warm-ups did not feel great for squats. And so then I had some hesitation going into my third and final attempt in that competition. But this year it felt completely different. Warm-ups were very nice and smooth. I took my time and I was just really dialed in at that point in time, even though the body was beat up at that point in the day. So we go for the 190, get 190 very easily. And so our next attempt, as we had planned, was 210 pounds, which is about somewhere between like 455 or like 463 pounds, something like that. And so then I go for my attempt at 210 kg. This is a weight that I think just 2 or 3 weeks ago I'd hit for 3 reps. So we knew that it was going to be easy. The goal again was to spend as little time as possible under that bar to conserve energy. And so one of the issues that I realized I was having, especially with my squats, is I definitely was rushing the eccentric portion of the squat. And so I was almost kind of dive bombing into the hole. And so some people can definitely do that. I know of some prominent squatters who have a super fast eccentric on their squats and it works well for them. But one of the issues that I've been having is that it has been sort of throwing off my balance. So then if I'm too fast on the eccentric, then now my weight shifts in one direction and I have to compensate. And the thing about it is I've sort of gotten away with it in that usually my lower back essentially is strong enough that I can sort of muscle through a lot of these reps. But we want to get to the point where we are just dialed in form-wise such that we can fire from every single muscle that's involved in the body efficiently such that I can have the most strength and force applied to every single lift that I'm performing. So we go for the 210. 210 moves up very nicely, set a national record with that 210 for my weight class. One thing that happened though is I had an issue, as I was mentioning. I was too fast on the descent on that 210. My weight shifted to my toes and I had to compensate to get weight back towards my heels and midfoot, but I overcompensated and my weight shifted all the way back to my heels. And so my toes literally lifted off of the ground and I had to finish the rep essentially on my heels. But again, as I was saying, strong enough to get that, which is good because I needed to get that out of the way so that we would essentially know where we were. I needed that for my subtotal. So I get the 210 and I figure, okay, cool. The day is essentially done with regards to winning my weight class. Our intention was to go from 210 to 230 for our final attempt. So I've been pushing and pushing to really move towards getting that 500 squat as being just my goal. And this competition, I was saying in my head, this is the time, this is the day when we're going to get that 230 squat. But, fate would have it otherwise in the sense that the day did not end up going in the way that we wanted. I finish up that 210 attempt, everything feeling good, happy about the attempt, it counted. And I get a text from my coach that the score has been updated and I'm 1.25 kgs behind first place. And so this was a complete shock to me because I was expecting that I would have been good to go. But what had happened, as I had mentioned a few minutes ago, is that dips completely fell through. And so I'd built up a deficit there that I needed to overcome. So Amin, who is the guy who placed second in my weight class, he was having an absolutely stellar day. He set the national record for muscle ups and for his dips, a monster dip at 127.5 kg. And shout out to him because that was absolutely insane. I'm going to be putting in some serious work on my dips all because of this guy. And so it's cool. It's really awesome to have someone to really want to compete against and to make sure that they are not going to be able to defeat you the next time you go up against them. And so anyways, Amin is up by 1.25 kg, and he has his final attempt for squats, which is 170 kg. He failed it in his second attempt and was going again for his third attempt. So if he had gotten the 170, I think there would have been a deficit of somewhere around 5 to 6.25 kg from first to second place. And so we waited to see what would happen, and it so happened that he ended up failing his 170, which only put me 1.25 kg behind first place. And so then instead of having our YOLO squat that we wanted for that 500, which was going to be the 230, I only needed 215 kgs to be able to win my weight class. And so we decided that we were going to play it safe. That's really the smart move. At the end of the day, we selected 215, which was a weight that I had moved several times in training, and I didn't have an issue with it, knowing that that was going to put us right over the top to be able to win our weight class. And essentially at this point in time, I had actually sort of not necessarily given up on pound for pound, but I knew that the suffering of my performance on the day was definitely going to make it a lot easier for someone else to beat me to pound for pound. So we pretty much just had to, in a sense, settle for beating my weight class and then just waiting to see what would happen. So we go for the 215 squat, which again, another national record. And here we have it right here. We knocked that down. So 215, I've gotten it in training several times, and the 215 in competition was probably maybe my second fastest 215 that I've hit. The first time that I attempted it might have been the fastest. And so 215 moved really nicely, and I had more in the tank. It really made me want to have been able to load squat up on the day. I think 220, 225 would have potentially been there. 220, 100% would have been there on the day, and that would have been cool. But at the end of the day, we needed to play it safe and just be strategic in our weight calling so that we would be able to guarantee beating my weight class. So I get the 215. We end up winning my weight class on the day, and then it really came down to waiting until the next day to be able to figure out if I was going to win pound for pound. The next day, which was day 2 of the competition, is when the upper weight classes went. So that would be 87 kg, 94, and as well as 66. Abu Asada, who was the one guy who was the big threat because he was coming in the 94 class with a massive squat, opened at 560 pounds, insane weight, and just something goes wrong. And so he ended up failing that rep, went for it for the second time, and he got the rep. And so now he bumped up to, I think, 275 to finish on the day. 275 would have been for the pound for pound. It just so happened that he missed it. So then I ended up winning pound for pound as a result. So this was one of those situations where it was absolutely out of my hands. You know, after I finished my performance, I did what I could and then just had to wait to see how things would unfold. And at the end of the day, I think one of the lessons that I really learned in this competition, as well as just really a little bit more about myself. You know, at the end of the day, we all can perform well on a day when everything is great. You know, the body's feeling good, everything's responding as it should. But what do you do when everything kind of starts to fall apart? The entire plan sort of goes out the window. And I was able to show some resilience on the day, and that's something that I'm very much proud of. And it's something that I really want to have been able to show people. You know, I think everyone would have been super happy if I had had that perfect day and gotten the 450 that I wanted. You know, I would have qualified for final rep, the whole 9 yards. But there's so much less of a lesson that is learned from watching someone just kind of breeze through rather than have to fight through the entire time and not give up until the very end to finish what they started. And so I'm definitely proud of myself. I can give myself a pat on the shoulder. I'm definitely, with my high expectations, I'm certainly disappointed that I did not reach that point that I wanted to. Right now, you know, we have such a deficit between America and Europe, they have 2 or 3 years ahead of us, but like I was just so determined to be able to really close that down this year, and I sort of fell short on that. But at the end of the day, I was able to hold it together, and hopefully that is a great example to everyone that's watching, everyone that was supporting me. There are so many goals that you all have that you're trying to reach, and at the end of the day, if you decide to give up, you're guaranteed to fail. But if you decide to just be relentless and continue to fight until the very end, you never know what will happen. So that's why you really have to show up on the day for a competition. You know, you never know what's going to happen. Don't say just because someone is stronger than you, they're going to beat you. And so for everyone in my weight class that was coming in, they probably had an expectation that I was going to put up some crazy numbers and that would be the end of it. And then they saw me start to sort of fall short on the day, and it really opened up some doors. I ended up closing it at the end, but you know, that was definitely one of those things that is a surprise. And so competition is a battle. Don't shy away from competition because you think you don't have a chance of winning. That's not the point. Think about the person that you actually become as a result of the work that you have to put in order to be ready for competition. That's going to make a huge difference. But that's really the end of it. If we're talking about what's next, I'll probably give a little bit of insight on that in the next video, but Nationals 2025 will not be my last competition of this year. And as I mentioned, got a couple other updates that I'm going to drop. So hopefully maybe in one of the next couple videos, I will chat a bit about that and continue to update you all on what we have going on. There's definitely big things planned for the rest of 2025. And so again, I appreciate your support. I want you to stay tuned because this is only going to get better and better. We are growing this community of street lifting in the United States, and we are going to build it to the point where we are finally contenders at the world stage. And it's really only a matter of time. This year, we were the closest that we've ever gotten, and who's to say that in a couple of months of training, we are not going to be even closer. So the future looks absolutely bright right now, which is good stuff. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate your support. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, share it with a friend, show them the video so maybe they'll be inspired to get into street lifting and compete in this awesome sport. And so that's a wrap for me. I will see you all in the next video. Don't forget to continue to strive for mastery. That's it.